Hey folks, this is Rabble Rouse and Rich Bergeron.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Tornado, Tony Pennicott.
And psychic Tom Badger, with his crystal ball ready to go.
Well, I remember a couple weeks ago when I talked to you guys about Tommy Fury. Maybe it was last week. I think it was last week. Tommy Fury not getting into the country, and them saying it must have something to do with his father's conviction. And what did I say? It probably has something to do with Daniel Kinahan. And guess what? That's what Sherdog is saying. That the fight with Tommy Fury is now off, and he is not allowed to enter the U.S. due to his ties to Daniel Kinahan and the Kinahan cartel. So yeah, wasn't a big leap to take to figure that out, but for a little while I thought I was the only one that was making that connection for some reason. Like everybody suddenly forgot.
Like you say, Rich, when there's smoke, there's fire.
Mm-hmm. So interestingly enough, talking about 6 degrees of separation, Kenzie Morrison, the son of Tommy Morrison, just fought the new opponent for Jake Paul, Hasim Rahman Jr.
Yeah, I saw that.
So obviously he saw something. Jake Paul must have seen something in Tommy's son's fight that he liked as far as Hasim Rahman's beatability, we'll say.
I mean, you know what? That's a hell of a problem. You know, whether what you think of Hasim Rahman Jr. or Kenzie Morrison, you know, undefeated heavyweights. And a lot of people were thinking that maybe Hasim was the one that was going to win that fight. It didn't work out that way. Morrison stopped him. But now it's like, now we're going to like, you're right. It's like, did he see something in that? Maybe he did, but I'm like, you're still talking about a guy that was an undefeated prospect not that long ago. And, you know, that's a hell of a step up.
Paul is saying he doesn't even know if Tommy actually got denied. He might be using it as an excuse. I don't think we have any evidence of that. That would be great. As far as Rockman goes, Paul says he's obviously a lot bigger than me. Wait a second. They have met in the past. They sparred together a year and a half ago. He said it was a really tough session, sparring. It's really interesting to deal with. I'm a way better fighter now. I'm sure he's a better fighter now. We're going to see who improved more in the last 18 months.
Well, that's another interesting thing. You know, they've been in the ring together, so you do have to feel for someone like that. Obviously, sparring sessions are a lot different than, you know, fights with, you know, without the headgear with the smaller gloves on. But like, you get in a sparring session with somebody, and you can a lot of times tell right at the bat, you know, this guy, he doesn't concern me. He ain't nothing. I'll fight him. You know, I mean, I've been in there where guys are like, wait, this man's supposed to be good? You know, no, he's way overhyped. But then again, same thing. Heavyweights, you know, a real heavyweight, one punch can, you know, change a lot of things. And now you're taking the guys you made sparred with bigger gloves, with the headgear on, and you're going to be taking all that out of the equation. That could be, you know, chance to step into more of a danger zone.
Right. So, yeah, he says he's crazy for taking the fight. He admits that. Also, Tommy Fury came out with a statement and said that I will fight in a neutral country that both parties can enter. This can be anytime, any place, anywhere. So, of course, Paul shot back. I'm confident you are a scared little boy who doesn't want to fight or understand business. I will pay you $500,000 to fight me in the UK. I will do it shortly after August 6th. Accept? Question mark? That's how the article ends. If he accepted. This one is some fights to talk about. Adesanya winning his main event fight. That's not looking spectacular. And it was kind of crazy because I just stumbled upon this quote from Chris Pratt in my Facebook feed. I think it was yesterday. But basically, I'm not going to be able to quote it word for word because I don't have it in front of me. But he said that as an actor, he's not a fan of the sport of MMA, or not. He's a fan of the sport of MMA, obviously, because he watched it. But he said he was not a fan, even though he doesn't know a lot about the sport. He's not a fan of what Israel Adesanya did the other night because, you know, he's supposed to be that kind of guy that is trying to show you how badass he is. You know, he acts like he's this badass tough guy, and he goes in there and goes 5 rounds unanimous decision against Jared Cannon in here, and he doesn't wow anybody, according to Pratt. He was disappointed in that main event. I myself,
I have to confess, I fell asleep. This happens never. In the third, I think I woke up and the 4th round was almost over, and I thought it was the 2nd round almost over. It's the same thing I had seen, and that's, oh wow, that's about a first for me. That's pathetic.
yeah.
Stuff about this Ami stuff, this cartoon stuff.
Anime, yeah.
When he made it.
Or hentai.
Wow.
Hentai, they call it. I saw that where they were getting into it, and Sean Strickland and Adesanya were going back and forth. And Strickland was actually giving a lot of props to his opponent before the fight, Alex Pereira. And, you know, I kind of pointed out his record's only 5-1. And I thought Strickland was going to carry that fight. But he got knocked out quick. He had a little bit of early success, but not much. I mean, Pereira just kind of has a little bit of a feeling out period, and then he just connects where he needs to connect.
It all know styles make fights. And the problem is, I think Sean was just a little ahead of himself. You know, saying that there's not a Roy, that he's afraid to stand up. But for Roy's the major leagues of kickboxing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think that he could have tried to at least get it on. You know, there's an old cliche boxing about stiff, don't be stiff. And, wow, I mean, it just really let down by him. He just seemed to think his chin was going to be concrete. Well, learned something different. Oh, what a knockout.
All right, so we're going to have a special guest next week. We just confirmed it's not going to be tonight. But a guy named James Hergott. I'll tell you more about him next week. But he's a big fitness guy. And he runs some pageants they call body transformation. It's basically a little bit different than a weightlifting competition. It's still, you know, the posing and stuff like that on stage. But you bring a before picture with you to show what you used to look like. And then you get on stage to show everybody what you look like now, and then the biggest transformation wins the prize. So I was telling Tony before the show that he needs to tell his 5-weight class story from college boxing. I'm sure that James would love to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, like when I got there that semester, January '97, about again. 95 pounds. That was, say, January 17th. Okay? You're going to, in 2 weeks, you're going to be on January 30th. Okay, it's no problem. On January 30th. Show, an exhibition type show, so just start getting your weight down. Okay. So, into that, I was maybe 187-ish, and they're like, okay, you're going to fight at 190. Okay, that's cool. Following week, what are you at? Down to about 180. Or 185. But anyway, wait a minute, I lost weight, I'm going up weight. The next week, what are you at? 182? Okay, you're going to fight heavy weight again. Yeah. Next week, what are you at? 180. Okay, you're going to fight at 180. Well, thank God for small miracles. And then a couple weeks later, what are you at? say, what are you at? Well, 178, 180. If you work out, okay, you'll be 65 by Friday. I will. That's kind of foolish. But hey, it makes a great sport. You know, it's funny, I with baseball friends last week, I was I don't know, for 20 years. And she lived in my dorm. And we were pretty good friends. And she was the girl I bumped into walking up the hill that day when I had left something in my dorm when I was in sauna that morning. And I took the elevator from the one classroom up to the floor, but then I had to get off and walk up the hill to my dorm. And I'm like, I'm looking. And then I'm going to make it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to share. I'm sharing. Yeah. What am I? Get me up to the door. She goes, what do you mean? I really had, like, I had her, like, she threw my arm around. And then I'm like, just carry me up there. I can't walk. She's like, you're not terrible. I'm like, of course you're terrible. She's far later than I was. It's 2 hours ago.
I saw something about, I can't remember the name right now off the top of my head. I want to say Roy Jones Jr., but I don't think it was that. There's another story about Roy Jones Jr. I can't tell you though. It was somebody talking about how his father did that to him. His father said, all right, that was a great job. Now you're going to go down to 165 or something like that, 156 from 175. And so he ran all night long and finally made the weight the next morning. Literally all night long. You lose like 20 pounds, but I'll have to figure out where I heard that. But anyway, the big point on Roy Jones Jr.
When we talked to Vinny Paz, over years ago, he was always talking about cutting weight, and they finally showed it when he did the London League for this movie, going against Roger Mayweather. And he was so dehydrated, and he ended up in the hospital after that. But they said they didn't turn away. Mayweather and his people were there, and they're waiting for Vinny. They're calling up his room, and they're like, where you at? And they're like, he was on the bike, and we're wrapping him in saran wrap. He was riding the bike, and he's like, hold on, I'm going to be there. And they're like, well, how are we going to lie? Whatever. You don't want to obviously let our opponent know that we're killing ourselves to make weight. Well, no, you went to the wrong hotel. You were wrong. One season panel thing was like, you go to the wrong hotel. But Vinny would always talk about, like, you're making weight. They, on the movie, like when he, training with Kevin Rooney, and he's like, what are you weighing right now between fights? And he's like, oh, I'm not in fight shape. He goes, yeah, but what do you think? What's on the scale? And he's like 170. He's like, he's weighing 140. And you try to think like 154. And he goes, well, I won my first title at lightweight. He goes, yeah. And he goes, okay, wait, yeah, when the first time I got laid, he goes, I was in like a parking lot behind the 7-Eleven. He goes, when I want to get over my wife now, I don't go back to the parking lot. I've learned to a mile. You got to learn to a mile. Good analogy. Yeah.
So Roy Jones Jr. was talking to somebody from ESPN the other day, and got into some subject about bad relationships with fathers. And Roy told a little story about his dog he used to have, and the dog bit somebody in the family. So the father came over to Roy's house when he wasn't there and killed the dog. So Roy was talking about the story, and he said, the ESPN guy was like, what did you do? Like, what happened after that? He goes, well, I told my dad, I said, if you fitting to come over my house again to kill something, you better be ready to die with it. It's like that. So, yeah, I don't know how much he talks to his dad after that. But I don't imagine they had a good relationship after that. So,
well, I remember, they always said that between Roy and his father was always a very cold relationship. And they said his father was really overbearing on him, and a lot of stuff that he did to Roy was just not very fatherly. Hey, I understand you're trying to train somebody, you want to be a world champion and all that. I remember, because I threw my teammates in Lock Haven, huge Roy Jones, both Roy Jones. like they followed Roy Jones like we followed like Marchand, and Vinny and those guys. And I remember the one of them saying, like, when Roy was a young boy, they were fishing at a Pensacola. And Roy dropped poles in the water. Father, like, threw them overboard because their mind was like shark-infested water before you go swim with the fishing pole.
That'll teach ya. But anyway, we interrupted our UFC 276 recap, so I already mentioned Pereira versus Strickland. Pereira got the best of Strickland, knockout first, 2 minutes and 36 seconds in. I did not see that count. I thought Strickland was a better, more well-rounded fighter and needed to perform this time after kind of just getting a lackluster decision like Adesanya did in his previous fight, but he looked like crap. I think he was a little bit intimidated. But yeah, he's going to have to rebuild himself to get back into the title contention. And then after that we had Volkanovski versus Holloway 3, and it turned out just the way the first two did, or at least the first one. The second one was a little bit more competitive, but this one, it was funny because I was watching the feed there, the illegal connection, and they have a chat room window, so I had lost the feed and came back in to see how that fight was going, and then it was just ending. All kinds of people were saying robbery for Max Holloway, and I watched the first 3 rounds, and unless Holloway knocked Volkanovski down 6 times in the last 2 rounds, I don't see how Holloway was robbed.
Okay, now let's back up. Someone said last Saturday that Holloway was robbed of that decision.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they were joking, though. I mean, they could have been doing it for humor.
Yeah, that. I don't think he went around. I don't think he was there mentally.
Yeah.
Something was off with him. I mean, the box he was in against Qatar was excellent.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that was Kowalski just shut it down, or Max just couldn't pull the trigger, but it was...
it didn't help that he got a cut early. You know, he got the cut in a really bad spot, too, like right on the side of the bridge of the nose, rather than on the bridge of the nose, where it drips down the front part of the nose and then just goes to the mat. It was going down into the corner of his eye. So, I mean, I can't imagine that was easy to deal with, even though he had a good cut man that kind of helped it stop bleeding.
Oh, yeah, I mean, of course. But you know, what do the old-timers say? Champions find a way.
Yeah. So, I don't think we'll see a fourth in that rivalry.
No.
And then,
he's Max is just hoping Kowalski moves up to lightweight.
Right. And then the one fight I predicted was going to go pretty much the way it went, although I did not anticipate Robbie Lawler doing so well in the beginning. Brian Barberena was definitely not a cheap date, and took Robbie Lawler to deep water and then knocked him out. And I refused to pick this one.
Did you see the whole thing, Rich?
Oh, yeah. Now, I refused to put this in my lineup because I didn't think Robbie Lawler could get knocked out. I thought he had a better chin than that. But, boy, Brian Barberena took some punishment and waited. He waited for him to get punch drunk, basically. Not punch drunk, but, tired. To the point where he was kind of looking listless in there. And then Barberena just strung together the right punches and got the TKO. But Lawler was
and the elbows.
zipping.
The elbows.
Yeah, the elbows were really good. Lawler was zipping in punches earlier.
His punches much of an effect. I mean, the power differential in that first round was, Brian, I knew had to do something different, but he was a tough guy. And then I think Robbie started, but you notice, Robbie was looking up at the clock.
Yeah.
That's never a good sign. And, then Brian just started in with those elbows because, I mean, hey, Muay Thai, the science of 8 limbs,
Yeah.
and the elbows did so much damage.
That was a beautiful knockout. And, actually, I shouldn't say that was the one fight I predicted correctly, because I believe I said Jalen Turner was going to win as well. I know I picked him in my lineup. But he made quick work of Brad Liddell, and he's been knocking people out, but this time he got a guillotine choke submission just 45 seconds into the fight. And that was a surprise. And speaking of guillotines, Donald Cerrone's career ended with one the other night, and that was why I guess he was picking these journeymen to face. You know, at first it was Joe Lazon, then he got the bad knee situation, so now stepped in Jim Miller, and this was another one I should have picked Jim to get the stoppage and put him in my lineup, but I was hesitant because I figured Cerrone was, you know, too much of a crafty dude for this to end in a stoppage, and I underestimated Jim Miller. His comeback is incredible. Like these last 4 or 5 fights that he's strung together, he's just looked unbelievable, especially considering the amount of fights that he's had. But he's fighting smart. He's evolving to a new level, and he's looking good. So I can't wait to see who he fights next. But Cerrone put the gloves down and retired. He wasn't actually the only fighter to retire on the card. Old Jessica I gave a very emotional speech in her retirement, and talked about how she first met Macy Barber while she was sitting all by herself at an event, and went over and introduced herself. There was like a kind of a little bit of a after fight moment between them two, where they met each other in the hallway, and that went viral on Facebook. But yeah, great career, and you know, she didn't really have any title shots or anything like that. Wasn't really a very high profile main event fighter a lot, but you know, as far as female fighters go, she's definitely been around, fought a lot of tough people, and he deserves a good retirement there. And Cerrone, I mean, I could kind of tell he was losing interest his last few fights, and he has always been in a mode where when he was fighting for the money, he wanted to fight all the time, as much as possible. And now he's getting into situations where he's doing movies and he's making money outside the sport, as far as you know, gyms and stuff like that, and endorsements, and so he's not really needing the money from fighting anymore. And if he did, he might continue and go a couple more. But he also said specifically, when asked why he wanted to retire, he said, "I just don't love it anymore." You know, and why would you if you could be a Hollywood actor instead? He's actually in a movie I saw. I don't know whether it's Prime Video or where I saw it, but he's in a movie, and I think he's in it with Gina Carano too. I think she's one of the stars, but don't quote me on that. So good luck to both of those fighters. Ian Gary continued his phenomenal UFC experience against Gabriel Green. Gabe was very frustrated throughout the whole fight. I was actually picked him on one of my lineups, thinking he might be able to handle Gary, but Gary's just very technical. He got in a little trouble early. Gabriel started picking punches here and there and getting into his guard, but Gary just adjusted and won the next 2 rounds handily and got the unanimous decision. And one guy I did pick, thought he was going to get the submission. Everything on paper told me that he was the guy to pick and he was going to get it. But, man, Dricus Duplessis, Dricus, I guess is how you pronounce it, against Brad Tavares. What a disappointing fight that was to watch, because Duplessis in the striking category was unbelievable on this one, even though he's more of a submission expert. He was unloading on Tavares, and just nothing he could do was enough. And then he got tired. He got tired going into the third, so he was just barely landing. But, I mean, if he had all his strength and he had all his cardio going, he would have definitely won that fight by knockout. But that was very disappointing, because that was my second big loss. I had picked Uriah Hall before that. So, and Macy Barber, I had started off with a win with her over Jessica I. Kind of knew that was coming. But the one that I regret the most not picking was Julia Stoliarenko, because she was very cheap. She was not expected to win against Jessica Rose Clark. And not only did she win, she broke the girl's arm after the girl tapped. It was actually kind of comical in the interview. I wasn't thinking Jessica Rose thought it was funny, but Julia said, they asked her why she kept going with the arm bar, and she basically said, I've been in too many situations where you let go and they scramble out of it, so I just wanted to make sure. And she made sure. Choke that sucker. And that was the quickest stoppage of the night. Just 3 seconds quicker than Jalen Turner over Brad Liddell. 42 seconds by armbar. By arm break, I should say. So that's UFC 276. It's a good card all around.
Now, Rich, here's the point. The beauty about MMA is I do believe that the next fight for Asanya will be Alex.
Alex? Yeah. Probably.
Okay, now in boxing, wouldn't it be beautiful if we had something like that? Like after the Joe Smith fight, if they were interviewing Vidavid, he said, I hadn't thought about it much, but I think the fans want to see me in Bivol.
Yeah.
He is at ringside, and he comes up, and you know that the fight's going to happen, that the fight that those hardcore fans like us want, instead of having Vidavid have to go to London to fight Yard, and, who knows what's going to happen with Bivol. But that's, because I was just thinking that. Why can't boxing do that?
Yeah.
Because darn well that's going to happen.
Well,
Alex will get that chance. That's going to be a money fight.
In a way, it's a lot easier for it to happen in MMA just because of the leagues. You can't go outside your league to fight. In boxing, you can fight anybody, as long as they're going to agree to their contract. So, you can have separate promoters going against each other. It works. But in MMA, they don't do that shit.
Yeah, and Tom, another hiccup going into that was, in boxing, because you have this alphabet soup anymore. I mean, we live in one world. There's one world, but there's how many world titles per weight class? You have like your big four, your big five now, in the WBC, the WBA, the IBF, the WBO, the IBF, the Super, the Diamond, the Emeritus, in recession, all these belts. So basically, we just two fighters. Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, they've been talking about this fight for years now.
Right. Why hasn't it happened? Why hasn't that happened?
Yeah.
Now, and when we were discussing all them years ago, which a fight I never thought was going to happen, and it did, and it was an underwhelming fight, was Pacquiao Mayweather. Talked about it for 5, 6, 7 years. Pacquiao Mayweather.
Until it was irrelevant, almost. It buried it too long. And that's why we may see that with Jim Crawford. We might.
And here's the thing is, these guys now, they have the mentality of business and women, because you have a lot of female fighters out there. Now, I give all the credit in the world to Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano for two of the best in the world duking it out. A great fight. I always go back to two fighters from the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s into the 90s. Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns. Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns have to fight each other? No. They could have, each taken their belt and fought a bunch of mandatories and called the other guy, accused the other guy of ducking, him, and no, you're ducking me, blah, blah, blah. And they would have, but it always would have been, how this fight not happen?
Right, and don't forget Duran and Hagler also. And
the whole Fab Four, really. And then you got Benitez in there. He fought them all too.
Right.
Well, exception of a Hagler, he was off that. But you had like these great fighters. They were willing to fight each other because there was something legacy. Fighters now are more worried about that. At the end of their record, that's one. But worried about so you just won this big fight. Well, what are you looking at? Well, let me talk to my manager. Well, I would really like to fight that other guy who's got a world title, but I'm not going to mention his name. Because he's mention his name because he's not on my level. So you get a lot of that until the fights become then, in a way, irrelevant. Where it's the champion of that weight class, and Dana White practically owns you because he owns the league. Yeah, there and get right in the guy's face. Like, yeah, I want to fight you because you've got what I want. And if I want a belt, I can't, to get it, I kind of go through you. And
yeah, it's funny because
you're the number one contender.
They used to give a lot more shout-outs to the matchmakers in the UFC because I don't think they were encouraged to call people out. So they used to, not so much anymore, but they used to talk about you know, Sean Shelby, and who was the other guy that's left?
Silva.
Yeah, Mike Silva. And so they used to always, or no, Joe Silva, right? And I remember actually when Joe Silva left, I was talking to Ken Pavia, who used to manage a lot of fighters and hook us up with a lot of interviews with the UFC fighters. He was like the only guy who would back in the day. And I met him out in Vegas. I sat down with him and talked to him, took a bunch of notes about some of the things that he'd seen. And he ended up losing his management business due to an incident with Bellator. He had given some of the fighters some sample contracts that the UFC used as like an example. And the UFC basically got pissed. I think they sued him over it, and he ended up like losing his whole management thing over the pressure. And he was really good friends with Joe Silva at that time. And it got so bad with Dana White that Dana like forbid Joe Silva from even talking to Ken Pavia. And then finally Joe Silva just quit because he couldn't deal with shit like that. But yeah, I can remember that those days when almost every fight they would just be like, all right, whatever Sean Shelby and Joe Silva want to do next. I mean, it's up to them. They wouldn't really refer to Dana, but they definitely seemed to just give him the benefit of the doubt as far as letting him decide. And some boxers do the same thing. They'll be like, well, whatever Bob Arum says we're going to do next, that's what we're going to do.
Yep.
So it goes both ways.
In a way, I'm going to do a comparison here. And I'm going to go way back in the day. Well, for me, like the 80s, you know, when I was starting to grow up and look at things and understand things. I'm going to give you completely different tour here, but I'm just going to give it a quick chart. That's really the boom of professional wrestling. And Hulk Hogan was your international WWF, whatever. And I had friends of mine that favored NWA down like based out of North Carolina, it's like that because it was it wasn't as cartoonish, right? And Ric Flair. Well, I was a Hogan. My friends were Flair fans. But we all had Hogan Flair. That's why the Hogan would beat him. No, Flair was going to wrestle. Flair would win. No, well, we eventually did get that match years later when Flair jumped to WWF and then later Hogan to WCW. But folks like Bob Arum and Don King or Bob Arum and whatever. Well, Hulk Hogan goes down time play. Well, I'm the best wrestler in the world. Yeah, that guy down south. You want to come up here? Yeah, I'll take him down. Yeah, well, yeah, that Bleach Blonde, musclehead up in New York. I can take him down. Woo, and they do the whole thing back and forth. But it's never going to happen because McMahon and Ted would work together just like, say, Golden Boy and Bob Arum. So now, who does Vince McMahon own? In 1987, he owns Hulk Hogan. Well, man, where can I sell out a lot of guys? If I can't work with Ric Flair, I need something else to sell out a lot of guys. And it's got to be somebody I own. This is like Dana White. Well, I got to only use guys that I own. Shit, I own Andre the Giant. I'm going to sell 93,000 people right now. Mm-hmm. I can't go get Bob Arum, like, I got this guy here, but I can't challenge a Fiziev because he's a boxer. I can't challenge him, even though he might be the best light heavyweight in the world right now. But I sure as hell can match these two guys that I own and sell out, make a lot of money. This is the shit that goes to my idiot head sometimes.
Well, before we move off UFC 276, I did realize I just forgot to mention the no contest on the card. And I'm feeling bad this week for Pedro Munoz. Because this guy's getting a lot of grief. Now, I watched it. I saw every minute of the fight. I was rooting for Sean O'Malley. I had him in my lineup. And, boy, one of the worst things you can have happen in a fight is a no contest if you're doing one of those FanDuel lineups. Thankfully, I didn't get to do the FanDuel because when I went to go put my lineup in on Thursday, they didn't even have the MMA tab at the top. It's one of them shitty things that they have on their website that I hate. Like, they don't put up the MMA stuff until the very end of the week. And I didn't even realize when it went up. And I totally forgot about it, thinking I had already picked stuff. And then I went on there and I'm looking for my lineups and there's no lineup there. So I was like, oh shit, I didn't pick one. But I did DraftKings, and thankfully I didn't do FanDuel because I would have done a lot of wrong picks there too. I picked Strickland, I picked Cannonier, thinking he could pull off the miracle. Yeah, I had a couple of bad picks. I picked Uriah Hall. But Sean O'Malley was cruising towards a win, I thought. At least, he was starting to figure Pedro out a little bit, but it did not seem like he was going to get a knockout anyway. I didn't think that. I thought he was probably going to go towards a decision if he kept up that pace. But Pedro got poked in the eye, and the doctor came in, and immediately Pedro tells him that he cannot see. Immediately, basically. He can almost not even open the eye. And this is before they've given him a chance to put any water in it, or put a towel on it, or anything. And the doctor comes in. So he has the doctor look at it, and the doctor, within like 30 seconds, says fight's over. And basically because of what Pedro has said about not being able to see. And that's, obviously that's the one thing that they will close the fight at the drop of a dime for. As soon as you say you can't see out of that eye. But they didn't even have to do the how many fingers am I holding up thing because of how it looked, I guess, because he looked at it. And of course, Pedro got basically verbally assaulted all across social media for quitting on purpose and being outmatched. But I mean, I get it that fans are disappointed. Sean O'Malley is this big star and they want him to seal his fate as the superstar and keep getting knockouts, and they want to jump on the hype train and they want to cheer on their guy. But I mean, at the expense of a guy who got a legitimate injury and the fight had to be stopped. And that, you can talk all you want about whether he's faking it, but until you've actually been poked in the eye yourself to that extent, you don't know what he experienced. And Pedro
very good point.
Pedro published his medical records from after the fights, just because it was so bad on social media, them trying to say that he basically faked it. And he actually mentioned that they had to put special drops in his eye. And as soon as he said that, I knew exactly what he was talking about, because I had a friend of mine who, even wearing sunglasses, ended up walking into a tree branch that poked him in the eye. And he was in serious, serious pain, to the point where I had to drive him to the hospital. And so I drive him to the hospital, and they basically put, eye cocaine in there. There's even a cane at the end of what it is. And they gave Pedro the same thing. So you only get that if you're talking about serious, serious pain, and it's obvious that you're in pain. It's basically like a controlled substance. They don't send you home with a bottle full of it. They put 2 or 3 drops in your eye, and that's all you get until you get on your medication. So if they had to do that to him, it was a serious eye poke. And just because most fighters wave it off doesn't mean this one couldn't have been worse, So I just like to send a message to all those haters out there that, slow your roll a little bit and look at the evidence before you criticize a guy like that. And think about, how many fights has this guy been in where he's been in wars? You think he's really going to fake an eye injury to get out of a war? I don't think so. And I don't know how the payment system goes in the UFC when you get a no contest, but I'm sure that he lost out on some money by bowing out of that fight. And he didn't even bow out. That's the other part of it. The doctor called it off. He didn't say, I can't fight. The doctor did. So, that's just uncalled for. People should be a little bit more, not sensitive. I mean, you can go ahead and be an insensitive prick, but just base it on the facts. Don't just make stupid guesses thinking you know everything. Okay, so this weekend we have UFC on ESPN 39. That's the only MMA we have for a while, actually, in other weeks. Last week also, forgot to mention Professional Fighters League's results. Official results, I don't think we knew about, but they had their last playoffs until August last week. UFC on ESPN 39 first. That main event is Rafael dos Anjos versus Rafael Fiziev. And I'm betting on Rafael. Dos Anjos is 31-13 and Fiziev is 11-1. I love Fiziev's style. He is, talk about a guy who can string together a comeback. Bob Arena versus that fight, the Bob Arena fight. Fiziev has been through a couple of those. Dos Anjos has been around a lot. He's had some ups and downs in his last few fights, but he's definitely capable of winning this one. He's got the experience factor for sure. I don't know. I think Fiziev is on more of a tear. So I would bet on him in that one, but I would not be surprised if Dos Anjos pulls it out. If he's doing anything differently in training. So that's going to be a good fight. And we got a co-main event at middleweight. That's a lightweight fight. Middleweight's Kyle Boralho, 11-1. I've never heard of him. Fighting Armin Petrosian, who is 7-1. Barely heard of him. That's middleweights. Okay, Douglas Silva de Andrade, 28-4 at bantamweight, fighting Said Nurmagomedov, 15-2 at bantamweight. We got a heavyweight, Jared Vanderhaar, 12-8, fighting Chase Sherman, who's 15-10. Cynthia Calvillo, 9-4-1, fighting Nina Nunes, who is 10-7 at flyweight. Michael the Menace Johnson, he's 20-17 at lightweight, no cheap date there, fighting Jamie Malarkey, who is 14-5. Ayman Zahabi at bantamweight, 8-2, fighting Ricky Tercios, who is 11-2. Antonina Shevchenko, she's a 9-4 fighter, not as good as her older sister. But it's a flyweight fight. She's facing Courtney Casey, who is 10-9. A couple journeywomen here fighting. And then fourth fight of the night, Cody Brundage, 7-2 at middleweight, fighting Trayshawn Moore, who's just 3-1. And David Onama at featherweight is 9-1, fighting Garrett Armfield, who's 8-2. Kennedy Nchukwu at light heavyweight is 9-3, fighting Carl Roberson, who is 9-5. First fight of the night, Ronnie Lawrence, 8-1 at bantamweight, fighting Saeed Yakub Kakramano, who is 9-2. We have PFL results from last week. We'll just go through real quick. Anthony Pettis, we talked about a little bit because he got caught in a twister type submission. I think they called it something else, but he ended up losing to Stephen Ray by submission. We had a lot of different weight classes in this one. It's just a couple of different weights. We had light and heavyweight co-main event, Omar Akhmadov, 23-7-1. Yet to come for a fight that already happened. Hergott is still not updated that page. Okay, so I don't even know who won these ones, so I guess we can go over the results. That's weird. Hergott is gonna get their shit together. That's the first time I've ever seen it. A week later, and it says yet to come. Oh wait, this is August. So I guess they're having a rematch in August. That's funny. Anthony Pettis and Stephen Ray, they just fought. That's why it's showing. It's yet to come. Oh, that's funny. Alright, so I guess I'm going to go back here. Main page. That's the playoffs. August 5th, 2022. That's the main event of the playoffs. Anthony Pettis and Andy. I don't know how often that happens with the PFL. That's kind of crazy. To get a rematch the next round. They have a playoff format, but still. But basically, Pettis, didn't get the victory in that fight, but he ended up winning $750,000 to get some. Imagine that. $750,000 to lose a fight. Thanks. Kayla Harrison got $500,000 for a first round stoppage of Caitlin Young. July 1st. And Rory McDonald took $250,000 home in a decision loss to Sadabu Sai, who only made $52,000 for the same fight. While we're doing that, I'm going to just go right to boxing for a minute. We didn't have a lot of big name fighters last weekend, but a lot of crazy fights, that's for sure.
I don't remember any.
Box rack. Let's see. Let's see. We had some Japanese fights. Kenichi Horikawa.
We have a culture like this. How could they brought it forth?
Right? Kenichi and Shokichi fought on Saturday in Japan. We were talking about this last week. It's very rare for these fights to be on Saturday. Kenichi Horikawa lost to Shokichi Iwata, and another big name fighter, Maurice Briedis, lost to Jai Opataya. So that must have been an upset because Briedis was far and away had the better record. We also had the guy named Karen won his fight against Blake Minto. Karen Chukazian beating Blake Minto. Petro Ivanov beating Robert Talarek Saturday. Evgeny Shvedenko losing to William Skull. SCULL. It's a good name for boxing, but not a good name for winning, I guess. And then Jason Cunningham losing to Zolani Tete Saturday. And then Joe Joyce beating Christian Hammer in the UK. So Joe is making a name for himself as a heavyweight. Christian was a big step up in competition. It's not like a world beater name, but it's definitely a guy who has fought a lot of tough dudes. Joe Joyce is still kind of building his undefeated record. That is a great list of beaten fighters. And this weekend, the biggest fight is Derek Chisora and Kubrat Pulev. Unless you want to count the lighter weight guys as a bigger attraction. Mark Magsayo versus Ray Marcus. That's a big one. Magsayo is... Jesus fight right off the top here. It's actually a Jesus fight right off the front page. This one's from Argentina. Main event, Damian Alejandro Rojas, 15-2-1, fighting Jesus Adrian Danef, is 10-7-3. Azerbaijan. Republic of the Congo. Vacant France cruiserweight title is on the line between Brendan Deslaurier, 13-4-1, and Guillaume Houet, who is 12-2. That's the only fight on the card. Okay. love a main event with an 0-1 fighter. Daniel Quay. Akragana, that's the main event. 0-1 Daniel Quay versus Isifu Yusuf Saidu, who is 7-0. Also, Daniel Quay must have a brother, Alfred, because Alfred Quay is 2-34 on the same card, fighting a guy in his debut. Quay family. You don't want to box with those guys, as far as like learning something. You should lose. Hungary, fight in Hungary here. This is the main event worth talking about at least. Ferenc Berkey at middleweight. He's 13-1, fighting Ali Hasso, who's 4-0. That's for the vacant UBF European middleweight title. And what a bunch of loser records on this one. This is a cruiserweight fight here. Istvan Zeller. He is 39-33. He's only won one of his last 6. Fighting Alexander Kuvak, who has 13 wins to go with 86 losses. Has not won a single fight in his last 6. Then we got a 14-3 heavyweight fighter, Peter Sipos, fighting Adil Rushidi, who is 7-53. He is hungry for a win. He has also lost his last 6. Hungary. Well, this is interesting. In India, we have a fighter, just one name at middleweight in the main event, Shiva. 14-3-1. I believe Shiva is the Indian god of war, if I'm not mistaken. That's funny. There's a lot of one-name fighters on this, because I haven't seen that one. But Shiva is fighting Arun Sharma, who is 3-4. Then we got a guy named Prince, who is 3-3 at heavyweight. Jesus making his pro debut in Mexico. Jesus Reyes fighting Efrain Rodriguez Gonzalez, who's undefeated 4-0. That's a tough first fight. Another one in Mexico. Miguel Parra Ramirez. He is 20-2, fighting Adalberto Borges Covarrubias, who is 30-26. Primislav Benienda, 2-36, fighting a fighter. Alright, here's a big one. In Russia, Magomed Kurbanov, 22-0, fighting Patrick Teixeira, who is 31-3. It's for welterweight. Co-main event, Pavel Salyagin, who is 10-0, fighting Jose De Jesus Macias, who is 28-10-4. He's only lost one of his last 6 and has one tie in the last 6. But Pavel has won, of course, all his fights. De Jesus is in front of him. Obviously, it's in the United Kingdom, but boy, this is a whole fight card full of losers in the right column. The least amount of losses in the right-hand column is 17. 0-17 at lightweight. Lee Divine. How about that? He's not so divine. 0-17. Fighting Fuad Hussein instead of Hussein. Who's seen that? At lightweight, he is 8-0, fighting 0-17. Then you got 0-28, one draw before that, and he did get that draw in his last fight. That's Carl Turney. An appearance against a fighter making their debut, or his debut. And we got Alexander Zaladon. He is 6-29-3. We got Brian Wayne before that. He is 0-32. The guy before that says, "Oh, well, I'm 0-33 with 2 draws." And the most amount of wins belongs to a Christian. Christian Narvaez. He has 16 wins, 43 losses, and 6 draws. Crazy. Phil Williams before that, 4-35 with 1 draw. And drum roll for this one, Jordan Granum, 6-94-4. One of those draws came in his last 6. And then the leadoff fight, Reynaldo Sagina, he is 15-64-5. Literally, if you look at all their last 6 fights, there's only 2 fighters on the right-hand side who have wins in their last 6 fights. And Pula versus Chisora, that's also in the United Kingdom, but that one's going to be on his own. There's not a bunch of matches. But, Derek Chisora had a 50-50 record in his last 6 fights, 3 wins, 3 losses. He is 32-12. Kubrat Pulev only has the 2 losses. 29 wins, so he's looking for win number 30 here. I think he's going to get it. Chisora has turned into kind of like, not so much an opponent, but like the guy everybody tests themselves against, like a gatekeeper more like him. But Pulev has been tested by better, so.
It's interesting to see if Chisora can avoid the uppercut.
Right.
It's been an uppercut. In his most recent fight, obviously, and that's, what was that? Yeah. Right? So, quick to be back in the ring. I mean, no way back. God. I'm going the wrong guy. I'm thinking Dillian White.
Oh, Derek Chisora, yeah, a little bit.
I was thinking, like, yeah, Derek, sure. They need to get knocked out. Very. And I'm looking at Dillian White. It's been a short week. It's been a long week.
Yeah, I hear that. Kubrat.
Right now, they're doing like work on like the house, so I barely even have computer access right now. Usually I jump on box track and look all that, but I don't have that capability.
Well then, that's why I'm here, so I can bring you the Fabio fight of the week. Also in London on the same card, heavyweights Fabio Wardley, who is 13-0, fighting Kingsley. How about that? Fabio versus Kingsley. That's a ritzy fight if I ever heard it. Kingsley Ibe, I-B-E-H. He is only 7-2-1, so I think Fabio's going to win that heavyweight fight. We'll see. For that one, we have Kaumin Agyarko, probably butchering that pronunciation, but he's undefeated as well, 11-0. Fighting Lucas with a K and a Z at the end. Messias, who is 28-4-1. That one's for a title, the WBA. International Super Welterweight title. And before, or after the Fabio fight, we have middleweights. Felix Cash, also undefeated. Everybody in the left-hand column is undefeated except the main event fighter here. Felix is 15-0. Fighting Vaughn Alexander, who's 17-6-1. That's for the vacant WBA International Middleweight title. And this might seem a little lopsided, but you got an 8-0 undefeated fighter here, super welterweight, fighting Michael Sorrell, who is 35-3-1. So possibly experience versus Leon. Maybe Israel has a huge amateur. So that's a tough fight to go in against someone like that. It was just 8 fights. That's literally, was it 8 times what? It's 35. 8 times 4 is 32, right? So that's over 4 times as many fights as the guy has in his career. He's basically the guy who's won that. So he does have 3 losses in a row. So that means, yeah, he has 6 times. 8 times. Yeah, 6 times. 6 times. All right. What else we got? Caesar fight of the week, too. Caesar Francis down in Plant City, Florida. 10-0 is Caesar fighting Raimundo Beltran, who is 37-9-1. Heavyweights worth mentioning: Christian Thune, 8-0, fighting Curtis Harper, who's 13-8. He's only won 1 in his last 6, so that's probably a 2-0 fight for Thune. See how that one goes. And oh boy, this one's kind of a mismatch. The guy had wins and losses. Jose Luis Castillo Romero fighting in Wichita, Kansas on Saturday, fighting Charlie Serrano, who's 16-7-2. Romero is 24-3. He has not lost his last 6. Anything is 6. And Serrano has had a draw, a no contest, and 3 losses in his last 6. Although he did win his very last one. Nothing crazy. And there's one from Galveston, Texas. 18-1 Chase Nelson fighting Jose Edgardo Garcia. Both of them have 1 loss. Nelson has 18 wins. Edgardo Garcia has 13. And he also has 2 draws. He has 1 loss and 1 draw in his last 6. That was for the title WBC United States featherweight title. And we got the real McCoy in the co-main event. Christopher McCoy, 12-1-1, fighting Joseph Francisco, who is 8-3. Both fighters undefeated, also in Texas, but in San Antonio. It's going to be on Showtime. Mark Marceo, he is 24-0, fighting Ray Vargas, who is 35-0 for the WBC World Featherweight title. Somebody's always got to go. That's our fight of the week there, too. Featherweight. Co-main event's pretty good, too. If somebody's won, it's going to change, possibly. Brandon Figueroa. He is 22-1-1, so even if it's a draw, somebody's one's going to change there. Figueroa, he is fighting Carlos Castro, who is 27-1 with no draws. Super bantamweight. And we have a regular bantamweight fight. The guys with the exact same record, Ramon Cardenas and Michelle Banquez. Both of them are 20-1. If that's not enough, we get a lightweight fight. Frank Martin, undefeated at 15-0, fighting Jackson Martinez, who is 19-2. Those losses in his last 6. And we got 23-0 Rashidi Ellis at welterweight, fighting Jose Marufo. Obviously seems like a tune-up because he's only 13-10 with 2 draws. 3 of his losses have come in his last 6. Nothing at all spectacular in the rest of the card, and that's it. For the week for big stuff, but that's actually a lot more than I thought based on the main page. Derek Chisora. Okay, so he has lost 3 in a row. I guess I was reading that.
Maybe that's why I was confused.
2 of them were Joseph Parker decisions. One was a split, one was unanimous.
Yeah, that is right.
And then Usyk beat him by unanimous decision before that. David Price TKO'd him in the 4th back in 2019 before that. No, he TKO'd David Price. It was 25-6. Knocked out Arthur Spilka before that. And Sinad Gashi. Never heard that guy. His last TKO loss, or KO loss, was an 11th round knockout to your boy, Dillian White. There's your 6 degrees of separation.
That's another reason I was moving on.
Right. So yeah, I don't expect Shara to be successful this week.
Not bad, Rich.
Okay, so the Christian Hammer fight, I mentioned Joe Joyce actually got a TKO in the 4th. He's stringing together the knockouts. That's his 1, 2, 3, 4th straight knockout for Joe Joyce. Last decision was actually 2 years ago, no, 3 years ago, against Brian Jennings, coming up on the 13th. Just in his Tuesday, I believe. That was maybe the 3-year anniversary. Ryan Jennings, that was his last decision. I believe it's his only one. So I thought everybody else. Ryan Jennings. Now you got another trivia question to answer. Who's the only guy Joe Joyce hasn't knocked out? Alright, so we mentioned the Professional Fighters League. That was PFL 5, the 5th event for the 2022 regular season. And I mentioned Stephen Ray beating Anthony Pettis. That was called a body triangle, although I don't think that's an accurate description. It's more like a rib twister. And I think I mentioned last week on the show that it was an injury that I'd never heard of. A rib being dislocated that caused him to tap. Not so much typical tapping situation. Apparently he was walking around fine like an hour afterwards because they popped it right back in. Weird. Popped out of place for a minute. And then the main event there was actually Matthias Scheffel versus Bruno Capoloza. And Scheffel put on a great performance against Capoloza. Took the unanimous decision over last year's winner. So that's Capoloza took pretty easily last year. Not so much this year. Okay, so 9th fight of the night, Clemson Abreu beating Renan Ferreira by unanimous decision. Chris Wade before that at featherweight beating Kyle Wozniak by TKO. Just 1 minute and 10 seconds into that fight. Ante Delaya beating Shelton Graves by unanimous decision. At heavyweight, Bubba Jenkins at featherweight beating Reinaldo Exum by unanimous decision. Dennis Gottsaub in the 5th fight of the night beating Reese Green by unanimous decision. Lance Palmer over Shaman Moraes by unanimous decision. 3rd fight of the night, we had Juan Adams at heavyweight, TKO and Sam K. KEI. TKO, that was second round, 2 minutes and 30 seconds in. Ryoji Kudo at featherweight beating Alejandro Flores Garcia by knockout, 2 minutes and 52 seconds into that fight. Brendan Loughnane beating Ego Usyk by unanimous decision. News updates before call it a night. Google Alerts. Okay, already talked about. If Usyk wins the rematch, David Hay believes Anthony Joshua will retire. That's news.
I can believe that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or fight Jake Paul.
Get with that. A lot of how the fight happens. If it's a devastating loss, either a stoppage or a sustained punishment, beating, then yes, definitely I can see that happen. Absolutely. Close loss or competitive, where there could be a chance for a third fight, even if he loses, then money talks. Well, I was reading something the other day, and I forget if I saw it on the Facebook page or if I saw it on the boxing link, where Joshua felt he won the first fight with Usyk. I think he was in a grand total of maybe 1 in that assessment, and he felt at the end like the look on his face wasn't like exhaustion or defeat, but shock of not getting the decision.
Yeah.
I don't see that. I don't see how he thought he could have won that fight. I mean, he had some moments in there, but Usyk just wore him down as the fight went on, especially near the end. I mean, he had him on the ropes, and he was, hitting him, with barrages of punches. And even other guys that have fought Usyk, for a guy that's a cruiserweight and now a heavyweight, they said he was kind of like, in terms of like a Marciano, where he physically and mentally trains you. He's on top of you. He's strong. He's always in good condition. He throws a lot of punches. He's well schooled. And it's like, even if you're not getting hit early in the fight, his sustained pressure wears you down, wears you out. And that's a lot what Rocky used to do. One of the fights that I really looked back a lot was his last fight, which was the fight against Archie Moore. Got him off the canvas, and he just stayed on top of Moore, and he just almost like you just put him in a meat grinder, and just grinded and grinded and grinded. So finally, Moore just wilted, went down 5, 6 times, where they finally counted it out. That's something like Usyk does. He's just on top of you and strong, physically. And he will wear you out. And I think he stops Joshua this time.
All right. You heard it here first, folks. Manny Pacquiao is coming back to boxing before the end of 2022. But don't get excited. He's not going to be fighting anybody famous to us, anyway. He's going to take on Korean meditator and YouTuber DKU. DK, just like it sounds, U. Y-O-O is the last name. It's going to be an exhibition, of course, and obviously, everybody knows Manny Pacquiao is eight world title holder, and different weight classes too. During his stellar career, and he announced his retirement last September after losing to Rodinas Ugas. Yu is known to practice his own form of martial arts called Warfare Combat System. Although it combines Aikido, Savage, and Kung Fu, there are questions as to its validity. He took on former UFC middleweight Bradley Scott in a boxing match last December, with Scott making use of his 20-kilogram weight advantage over the 6 rounds. Fortunately for Yu, he will have the size advantage over Pacquiao in the fight being dubbed Boxer versus Meditator. Yeah, you go meditate over in the corner. I'll keep punching you in the face. I think the meditator might have to meditate for a while after this one. It's going to be messed up. Alright. And it's probably going to be the last item. We talked at the beginning of the show about Chris Pratt criticizing Israel Adesanya. Well, I guess he had some comments back at Pratt. Adesanya has appeared on ESPN to take issue with Pratt, 43-year-old. And actually, Adesanya was even criticized for his ring walk, apparently. I didn't read that part. Carrying an urn. Oh, I didn't even know that. He was carrying an urn with Cannonier's name printed on it. Like The Undertaker. He was dressed like The Undertaker, too. He had the hat on.
Somebody had said something about it, so I immediately had to YouTube it.
How did I miss that?
Who actually had a really, really, really funny post was Mick Foley, a.k.a. Mankind, who had a legendary feud with The Undertaker for, years back in WWE and WWE. And the one thing he posted was the picture coming out with the urn, but he took one of the security guards and they photoshopped Paul Bearer's face on him. So it wasn't Paul Bearer was walking out to the ring, which was kind of hilarious.
So Chris Pratt's exact words were, "I'm going to say this as humbly as I can. I've never been in the octagon. I don't know this game. I'm just an actor. But I don't like to go out there and have all that talk and then just do a little bit of pitter patter. I mean, come on, man. You've got to capitalize on that promise of being so badass." So Adesanya took to social media to respond. He posted a clip from Chris Pratt's film Wanted, where the actor is hit with a keyboard, knocking his teeth out to form the message, F you. Good morning, Adesanya wrote. I'm the man, you're just some fan. And of course, Pratt performed a very quick 180 and said, you're right, I'm sorry, brother. And then Adesanya said, it bugs me when people criticize my work, having never themselves risked anything. It makes me a hypocrite. Well, this is what Pratt said. It makes me a hypocrite to do exactly that to you. My bad, keep on keeping on, champ. He had to know that was going to happen. He's going to have to apologize for that shit. Again, it's one of those situations where, like, it's, you can criticize the guy, but when a guy wins a fight, it's kind of like a slap in the face to criticize his performance, even if it is shitty as far as what you were expecting. He won, so I don't know. It's tough to knock people for that, but everybody finds a way. I mean, I've knocked some people for lesser things, That's why we're a free country, right? So that'll do it for us this week. Until next week, we're going to have James Hergott on the show. He's actually also, in addition to doing the bodybuilding stuff, he does documentaries and film stuff. So I think that's a little bit of why he's interested in the Zion stuff. I had sent him an email like, it would be a great documentary, but he was like quick to say, well, sounds like you'll probably get sued again if you tried that.
Hey, Rich, send us his email link. His webpage link.
What was that?
Or do you have it?
Oh, yeah.
Send us his webpage link. I'd like to check out his webpage.
I might as well just read it over the phone. I'm just going to connect to Twitter here real quick, and he probably has it right on there. Alrighty, where is that? Twitter.
Oh, while you're doing that, before I forget, happy 76th birthday to Sylvester Stallone yesterday.
Oh, yeah. That was a good post you put up, too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that was from last year when people that do this thing called the Rocky Files on Instagram, and they do like a podcast and all that. They told me they're going to invite me to do their podcast. Still wait for that. But last year, when it was coming up to like 75th birthday, they said, hey, we're getting a bunch of people to do 15-second videos wishing him a happy birthday. I'm like, shit, sign me up. So I threw on the Apollo outfit, and I had this 18-inch talking Rocky thing. It does all the lines from Rocky, the first one. And so I was like, I want you, chump. I want the stallion. And I was like, yo, man, happy birthday. I said, hey, especially for me, being an Italian, Philadelphia, the boxes, you're a big deal. You're a big deal to me, man. Thank you for everything over the years. And, I nailed it in one page.
Nice. Well, James Hergott's site is jameshergott.com. James, just like it sounds. Hergott is 2 T's. HERGOTT.com. And his program is called Radical Body Transformations. RBT Life is his little hashtag thing. And it's actually a multi-season Amazon Prime show and a fitness movement. So, we'll definitely check that out. JamesHergott.com. And we'll talk to him next week.
All right, guys.
All right, sounds good.
Adios.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks for stopping by. Great show.
Mm-hmm.